Hey folks, welcome to Code and Concrete, where we share the latest trends and the stories of trailblazers in the built environment. We hope you gain some insight from our wide range of topics, such as real estate development and sustainability, or blockchain, artificial intelligence, and data. Joining us today is Cain. Ian is the council president in Quincy, Massachusetts. He's got a background in real estate, energy, and technology, and holds a BA from Boston College and an MBA from Duke University. Ian serves on boards including PorchFest Quincy and Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital. Did I say that right?
Deaconess. Yeah,
Deaconess. Okay.
Yeah.
Milton, and the Innovation Council of the Shields Center for Innovation at BC High, among some other things, including Cubic Labs. And I hope we get into that because we were just talking about before the show started that, Quincy had this municipal bond, if I describe that correctly. And this was really, really groundbreaking in terms of a blockchain application in finance. So you guys, I think this is one of the most exciting blockchain conversations that I've had because, you are literally trailblazing in the true sense of the word.
I appreciate that. We, the city of Quincy, which there's so much history, and we can get into sort of that and the place that Quincy sits today and all. But through Cubic Labs, one of our member companies worked with the city recently, advising the financial advisor on the first municipal bond offering on blockchain in the country. This took place back in April. It was I think it was a $10 million offering that went to market. And the best part, apparently, about what just took place over the past 2 days that news has just been breaking is that BlackRock has purchased those securities in the secondary market. Wow. So thereby now making this a little more important than it just was a couple of days ago. So that's very exciting.
That really legitimizes it. In April, were you expecting BlackRock to purchase that? Or what was the initiative? What was the vision for actually putting this on the blockchain?
So, it comes from a place of, I wear a couple hats here in the city of Quincy. So as you said, I'm on the city council, but I also run Cubic Labs, which is a startup accelerator based in Quincy, Massachusetts. And, a couple of years ago, we set out to spurn innovation and entrepreneurship to complement real estate development activity here. So another sort of complementary economic growth mechanism that we want to see more startups grow and thrive and to, create jobs ultimately. And, we found, or blockchain found us in 2020. Blockchain found me through an educational program that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts had been running, educating local elected leaders on potential deployments of blockchain in cities and towns. And it was then that I recognized that there was an opportunity to have Cubic Labs create a differentiator in a crowded marketplace of accelerators and incubators, but also that Quincy could itself be more demonstrative of the technology of blockchain in terms of its operations and services that it provides to residences and connecting to global markets. So, we're fortunate in the city of Quincy. We've got a young CFO. He's 31, I think, year old guy who's an economist by training, Eric Mason, who's a good friend and colleague who, I'd approached, and I saw that there were transactions that had taken place in the blockchain in European markets. I think there was a corporate offering in Germany that was done by Deutsche Bank. And I said, what's stopping us from doing this here? And he said, let's look into it. And we looked into it. The Mayor Tom Koch, was quite supportive of the concept. I think, the idea being that individuals or residents of a city or town could eventually participate in a bond offering that their city or town is floating is compelling. So, the slogan would be at some point in time, Quincy bonds for Quincy people. So imagine aligning your civic and your financial interests at the city level. It's kind of like voting with your money. If you like a $10 million bond offering that's going to support roadway work or a new park construction or, something like this, or a school construction, finding a place for an individual who are mostly precluded from participating in the municipal bond market to participate and have some financial upside that rides along, with their hometown, eventually leading to other things like using the, coupon payments that individuals would receive to pay for fees, pay for taxes, keep that money in the system. So, we had a forward-looking city, and we had an organization that had been looking, at innovating municipal bond markets, who was fortunate to pair up with the city to advise the financial advisor on this transaction. And so that's kind of how it moved forward. But the city of Quincy generally has been super supportive to our initiatives in continuing to drive economic growth through the support of tech and innovation, specifically around blockchain. So, our mandate continues to be at Cubic Labs, in partnership with the city of Quincy. Let's make Quincy a blockchain capital, of the globe, on par with the likes of Lugano, Switzerland, who are folks who are doing the same thing. They enable payments. They've got merchants on the rails. And these are things that we're going to be doing, we've started in our own way, but we'll be implementing new measures in 2025.
Now, generally speaking, governments are not very quick, whether that's local, state, or federal, are not very quick to adopt technology. But you're doing something right, you individually and as a group and as an organization, to convince, government figures to adopt technology. What do you think that perspective is that other innovators and entrepreneurs around the country could start to adopt, so that where they live can see that same technological adoption?
Yeah, I think it takes, in government, most things take incentive. There needs to be some will that connects to a need, that connects to servicing the people that you serve. So in this case, we had a willing and interested elected leader who saw the opportunity to provide a different type of value to residents of his city. And, because people say governments move slow, they do, and they can also move fast. It just depends on the individuals that are involved, their aptitude in understanding what are the potential outcomes of a certain implementation of a new technology. And yeah, it takes forward-looking people, and that's what we've been fortunate to have. But the incentive is a big part of it, because I think even in the more broad conversations that you have in this space, blockchain, digital assets across the country, which has mostly been taking place at the federal government level, a lot of these groups, there's no incentive. There aren't truly organized constituencies that are demanding for blockchain or digital assets to be implemented in any part of their everyday interactions with government that would necessitate an elected leader to have to make any changes around.
Do you think that sentiment is changing, though, especially under the Trump administration, where blockchain and Bitcoin are actually common words now, in a presidential campaign, and you might see more advocacy for the technology implemented in either private markets, and we want government regulation to support that, or in the public view and government processes? Do you think that there's going to be a rise of more people talking about this, and would you encourage that now?
Yes, I think that there already has been an increase in people discussing it from the outset of the presidential campaign to today. I think that people look at it in different ways. If you're talking about digital assets, let's say broadly, right, or as people probably more commonly know it as crypto, right? Right. People have a certain perspective in their mind, and I think that the side that might be speculating on particular crypto assets is sometimes the more, it's the lead, right? It's the one that people know the most, Bitcoin being the most prominent use case. And even that has become more speculation of a held asset, as opposed to, its initial concept, which was money that did not have an intermediary between us to transact. So I think there's so many different parts of this. And then there's the technology that underlies that could be used in different, not just financial transactions, but in other types of industries and for different types of services. But I think that the conversation will grow. I still think that this is a turf warfare that we're in. And I think that, yes, the incoming Trump administration is friendlier to crypto. I do still think that there are many interests that compete or are felt as, I don't know if they're felt as threatened, but there's some sort of, as I said, turf warfare that the government wants its share. The banks don't want to be crowded out. Other intermediaries don't want to be crowded out either. So I still think there's going to be some sort of quote unquote healthy mix of people involved. But I think that the space will probably, they have a chance to in the next 2 years with control of Congress as well as the executive to advance some of these pieces of legislation that were laying dormant for the past couple of years, that including, the likes of the FIT 21 Act, the Stablecoin Act, and the repeal of SAB 121. So I think that, obviously you're seeing the market action that is exuberant for this election. It's been 2 months. We've got 33 days, I think, until the the president's inauguration. So there's yet to be seen. But I think that, most often with this technology, we, especially Cubic Labs, have tried to diminish the need to understand the technology for the sake of highlighting use cases that present true value to people's lives, and they don't have to understand the wonkiness and the nodes and the whole bit that would make them go glassy-eyed when usually discussed.
Right, and a good example of that is when you were talking about Bitcoin and not perceiving it as a speculative investment, but just a payment method. And I think that that's where a lot of blockchain use cases are rising to the top, where we go back to the first principles that this is supposed to be a way for two parties to interact without having to trust each other, because the trust is built into the technology, the underlying technology, which is interesting from a government perspective where trust and transparency are important. Mm-hmm. How do you see potential blockchain use cases being implemented at the government level? I think the low-hanging fruit everyone talks about are elections, but are there other areas where you think, or you're hoping, or you're working with startups that are trying to implement the technology in new ways?
I think that a sort of a big, hairy, audacious one. If this DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, is going to be as bold as people would like to believe that is going to be, then blockchain for implementation for tracking financial transactions within the federal government would be an incredible use case. It would, that is the most, that's like a very low hanging fruit that I think if you really wanted to understand how money is spread around, especially on a place-based basis, understanding, which congressional districts are actually getting, what type of pork. I think that is an incredible use case. Optimistic as I would prefer to be, I don't see that happening. But I think that would be a good one. And for tracking, different mechanisms, anything that you want to be able to have a window into where things are moving within the federal government, and money being the most important, I think would be great use cases. Actually opening the books and making the books truly public. That sounds like a winner.
Well, it would be incredible, that's for sure, and it would probably get a lot of people in trouble. There's a lot to be gained from the opaqueness that exists at the government level, even though it shouldn't, and in private markets, private sector. And that's one of the areas that we've been trying to tackle. How do we add transparency to the private sector? And so in a bit of a segue, I want to ask, because you've got very diverse experience here, where have you enjoyed working more? Has it been the public sector or the private sector? And which of these do you think is doing more work to encourage, blockchain use cases? Because in one perspective, you need the government behind the technology, because they can either enable it or, discontinue it with a law that doesn't favor it. Right. But at the same time, you need that private market innovation that's going to be coming up with new solutions, new companies emerging and tackling our problems.
Yeah, I've been I've been fortunate to touch a number of industries and spaces, and then to work in the public sector as well. And I think that I think in each sector, public and private, like they've just fed each other for me. So, I was fortunate to have a private sector career, then went into local politics. And I think that my private sector experience informed my public sector work a lot. And now my public sector experience has, henceforth affected my private sector life. And I think that, I think you're seeing a lot. You're seeing implementation of blockchain in different places. So, you got supply chain applications, which people have been using for years, right? That are quiet. They're not the more sexy crypto use cases or NFTs or meme trading that were the most prominent things that you've seen. The public sector isn't doing too much. And I think that there's room again for opportunities, especially on the local level and the state level, where you're closer to the action to implement some of these things. I think, again, it just takes willing partners who are forward thinking and trying to bring this innovation to the forefront. But that's why, again, we're trying to create a template here. This is thinking, from Cubic Labs, an organization that's trying to continue to advance innovation and entrepreneurship, main mission being economic growth and job creation. What is the future of cities and towns, right? In particular, that is the closest level of government to you. You pay your taxes, your real estate taxes here to city government. That is the biggest tax that you're probably, income tax is a different story, but you can, I see at least the municipal government as such a strong sovereign that you can make great change, but you can also template models that you can rinse and repeat in other cities and towns. Obviously, again, depending on their willingness. So, we will continue to build that case here through Cubic with the companies that we support, and continued sort of rollouts of different types of innovation within the municipal government that we can share across the country.
And which side of that power dynamic do you like? Has it been the public sector or the private sector? Because there's certainly a power dynamic. We want this, we'll allow this, and kind of that tug of war that happens. Which side do you like?
Power dynamic. So I think the way that I think about it is, good leaders sometimes have to be bold in their assertions and suggestions in order to make change, right? Sometimes it's not necessarily what people have been asking for, that connects to the change that you want to make. And so, I've certainly been willing to do that in my public sector role. We've, even personally in my public sector I've been advancing a municipal fiber optic network here in the city of Quincy for almost 7 years. And we're about to go to market with a bid package to have to have a group start construction in the new year. And this is a huge project too, because what this was solving for, and this actually did start from residents. So residents told me that they had a problem with internet service provider. And in Quincy, we have two. One is a large incumbent that's based in Pennsylvania, and another one is a large incumbent that's based in New York. One of them offers fiber, the other offers DSL. But either way, they own the infrastructure, they control the market, they control the cost and the quality. So I looked into models for how we could remedy this situation, because people were tired of paying so much money for bad service quality and poor, but paying a lot of money. And so I looked into cities and towns that had developed their own municipal fiber networks that they own and operate, but then turn it into what's called an open access line, meaning that any number of internet service providers can come in and lease space off that line from the municipality and then offer services directly to residents in a competitive marketplace. So we're creating a competitive marketplace for internet service. So, we presented this model again, working with a collaborative, forward-thinking leader in Mayor Koch, And this was something that has been so welcomed by the residents because, this is something that will provide a solution to problems that they've been complaining about. So, it's a big infrastructure project. We're going to provide fiber to the home for over 27,000 premises in the city of Quincy. It'll be probably over $100 million project. It'll take a couple of years to do. We're starting with 2 pilot areas in the spring. But still to this day, I've been on the council for over 9 years. And this is the number one thing that people contact me about when is it coming? When are we going to have an option so that we don't have to pay, these big guys anymore? So, coming up with innovative solutions that can be transformative for a city like Quincy, which it not only helps the residents in this case to be provided with proper connectivity, which allows them to participate in the digital economy, right? It allows them to have access to information. We saw during COVID that people were almost crowded out because some people didn't have access to quality internet who were working or schooling from home, and then there were throttles being put on by the large incumbents and jacking up the rates on data caps so that people would have to pay more to use the services during these high demand periods. So, but again, what this opens up for Quincy is, we're going to have a gig symmetrical capacity of internet, broadband capacity for the city of Quincy and its residents, which will allow businesses to come in as well and have access to that capability on top of it. And so all of this stuff, that we've kind of talked about so far between the fiber expertise, the blockchain work that we've brought forward, we're packaging up in the new year to form our next public-private partnership, which we're calling the Institute for Digital Infrastructure. And the idea is that we've learned that, in this next generation of technology and innovation, founders, people creating companies need to have access to certain knowledge and partnerships that will allow them to have a competitive edge against the others. And so we're bringing this fiber expertise and the broadband work. We're bringing our distributed ledger technology and blockchain. We'll have partnerships in machine learning and AI, and we're ideally having our own compute capacity so that we're creating a black box of partnerships and expertise for our founders to be able to build on top of and take their companies to the next level. So, this is a partnership that, we'll talk more about in 25, but, like we had formed a public-private partnership with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to form an R&D and commercialization program specifically around blockchain concepts, but this will enable us to tackle more of these verticals and, again, to differentiate ourselves in a competitive marketplace of accelerators and incubators.
Well, that's awesome. And I think one of the things that really enables this is, I'd say 2 things, open-mindedness and competency. And this is what I really like about you in general, is that you have a breadth of knowledge. And I think maybe coming from the private sector and being able to see practical applications of infrastructure or real estate and technology, and then going into government and saying, hey, I actually understand how these things operate and how we can navigate them, and bringing that level of expertise, because that really seems to be missing at the government level, where if an issue is not properly understood, it's not addressed, and then there's no solutions. And you can advocate, but you still have to trust that the officials are taking it upon themselves to study and research and to come up with plans to implement this. So I think that you and Quincy have done a really good job of doing that, of equipping yourselves with knowledge so that it can be transpired in solutions.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, politics, government, it's a tough game. It is, because you have to campaign to get the role. So you have to sell yourself as a advocate leader who's going to represent your interests best at the low, at whatever level. And, it's not always these type of innovative concepts that will be the best pathway to get you there, because at the end of the day, a lot of the issues, especially on the local level, are bread and butter stuff. Like, I'm responding to emails today about somebody complaining about their neighbor's tree that needs to be trimmed, or people are always looking for different types of roadway work, which we've invested in considerably here in the city. It's water and sewer. It is, it's you name it, but it's the local, these kind of, as I said, bread and butter issues that matter to people most. So being able to work on something like this is a huge plus. Like that is what makes this incredible for me, is that we can implement these type of changes here in a place like this too.
Now, if we take it back to your past and why, first you have the expertise to tackle these problems and the interest as well. I mean, we're going to go way back. So this is interrupting our regular programming of talking about politics so that we can talk about Ian Cain.
Okay.
Where did this start? When was the first time that you were latching on to technology or real estate and eventually became politics? Like, what were the milestones? Was this a high school? Were you on the debate team or class presidents?
No. So, well, my father, who by, I guess, primary background, he had his own, they used to call it a search firm, which is just, he was a headhunter. And like that was just before, or at the time I was born. And then sometime after that, he joined a small business that was focused on computer resale. So they did a lot of government contracts, packaging sort of computer systems and whatnot. And so I had exposure to computers very early age. Always had a computer in my life. And I'm born in the early 80s. So, my dad likes to tell a story about a time that I was 3 years old and the company had called home and were asking if I had logged into the server from home because they had found that somebody had done that. And lo and behold, I had. So, always had exposure to technology. Never was I a sort of coder or developer. I knew basic things through DOS, but, never took that even semi-pro. But, my dad ended up continuing on to form his own small business, doing similar types of work, computer reselling. And, again, I always had a Mac and a PC and was just an early adopter to the internet too. So the other side, the politics, I was always just a sociable kid. And, from a young age, you're kind of, people like to, I suppose, project onto you what they think you'll become. And one of those things that people projected onto me was that I would become a politician because I was so, friendly and able to communicate well. And at a young age, 7 years old, I was in first grade, and I have told this story a lot this year because I was on the campaign trail, but that, I sort of set on a future path of politics to go as high as possible to, eventually run for the presidency. And I created a sort of plan and a vision for myself that I more or less followed to a T until just after college. And, life comes at you and plans change shape. But I've always had in the back of my mind a form of public service. In, middle school and high school, I was on student council. That was kind of my athletics when I was younger. And it wasn't until, I kind of deferred, even though it remained in the back of my mind. I, ended up going into the private sector. I ended up going to grad school, got an MBA. And then it was after that, I'd come back to Quincy, a seat in the city council had opened up. And it was at a very exciting time in Quincy where Quincy was sort of figuring out its future identity and trying to redevelop its central business district and figure out economic growth. And I said, this sounds like a compelling time to get involved. And I never had anticipated running for local office, but I did it. It was an incredible experience. It was the most engaged that I, had been to that point in time, and allowed me to, reconnect with old neighbors and family and friends. And then I fell back in love with the place that I grew up, which was really fun. And now, Quincy has become a totally different place for me. Because I have, been so fortunate to have had a front row seat to this growth that we're seeing here.
So in the nature of the podcast being, real estate being one of our pillars, where in your story does real estate slip in there? Because you mentioned real estate development. What was your exposure there? What did you gain from it? And I'm sure it plays a very important role in economic development for Quincy.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say all the experiences that I had professionally, and we can get into some of them. I don't know how much time we have, but I could probably talk forever. But have lent themselves to each other. And so real estate, the first job that I had out of undergrad was with a global real estate firm called Tishman Speyer. They're based in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Some of their most prominent assets are Rockefeller Center, the Chrysler Building, the MetLife Building. They were at the time, I worked in their Boston office. They had acquired a couple of properties there. And I started on the property management team. We were managing a 1.5 million square foot Class A office property in the financial district in Boston. And, I was just like an assistant. I helped out the property management team. I ended up doing the accounts receivable and the rent roll on a monthly basis and reconciling those accounts, but understanding the ins and outs of managing a huge property like that. And all of our tenants were people like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, big banks, and so PwC had like 13 floors, building like that. So that was really interesting. I moved into their what they called the Equity Capital Markets Group, which was the institutional sales team. So they were selling private equity funds to pension funds and endowments and different types of real estate investments for acquisition and development activity across the world. So that was my first exposure to, I guess, that type of sales, but also to global capital markets. At the time, we were syndicating 5 or 6 different funds. They were in India, China, Brazil. We had a couple of U.S. and one in Europe. And that was when the BRICS term started to become prominent. So this is around 2004 to 2006 when I was with the company. But I learned a ton there. That's what got me interested in specifically private equity and then, sort of venture capital, I guess, at the same time. And, it's similar methods, but just different investments and vehicles around. So the real estate thing was cool. I ended up joining an energy-focused private equity fund after that. So, similarly, we were managing a different asset, power plant assets in this case, but we were using the same model, general partner, limited partner model, to raise and manage those funds and the assets. But the real estate experience set the tone for the rest of my career. And I think sort of coming around here at Cubic, one of the projects that we have been trying to advance in connection with government, this time at the county level, has been and we touched upon this at the beginning, that government, I guess we didn't say this, but we touched upon it, is that government is essentially the source of truth for a lot of things. Government holds your your identity. It holds the asset to, in real estate's case, your home or a building or property that you own. And here, those deeds and the titles are managed by the registry of deeds. And so we signed a memorandum of understanding with a county government in Massachusetts to explore putting titles and deeds on chain so that we could work back to the market and facilitate the ability for people to transact. Because you've seen a number of market-driven plays, right, where people are trying to bifurcate or split up ownership of particular assets between people using the blockchain, but it actually doesn't go back to the source of truth to bifurcate the actual ownership of the asset, which is at the deed. So these are the type of projects where, whether you're looking at the municipal bond market or you're looking at the real estate market, that we're trying to make more prominent, that make sense, add value, and people can play with and touch, that don't have to actually understand blockchain.
And was that conversation around putting deeds on the blockchain your first exposure to the technology?
No, it wasn't, because my first exposure was really, I knew about distributed ledger technology, but I didn't start playing with it or anything. It was, as I said, it was in 2020 when a group called the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative was hosting education sessions for local electeds. But this was, at the same time we were starting Cubic.
I see. And over the past 4 years, when you were first hearing about this technology to, how you want to apply it now and how the market is playing, what are some general shifts and tides that you've seen?
The energy and exuberance I'll start with, because in 2020 and 2021, people were riding high. There were a lot of layer one protocols that were had raised a ton of money, and they were just spending. They were just giving money out everywhere. They were trying to build ecosystem. They were trying to get people to use their chains and to use their tokens. And I think it was a little, I don't want to say reckless, but I think it lacked a particular, strategy. And it certainly didn't, in my perspective, have a long-term horizon to it. And that was 2021, because then we went into the quote unquote, crypto winter in 2022. And that energy deflated. But, at the same time, you had COVID. So what had happened was that there was expertise that was a little more distributed, so to speak. And people saw that there was a place like Miami that they could go to, or a place like El Salvador, or a place like, Singapore, something that was perceivedly more friendly and open, especially during a COVID. Singapore probably wasn't friendly during COVID, but Miami certainly was. They said we're open for business, and a lot of people migrated down there. But there was a vibe. It was also a vibe, and sort of from our perspective, we said if we could just take a little bit of the vibe that like Miami has and plant it here and let it grow and thrive, then play it in the long term. Because I think Miami was a little bit of fad. Then maybe we got something. So you go through crypto winter in 22. But during those couple of years, again, when we have an accelerator program and we're getting applications from people, the business concepts were not sound. They were people kind of throwing stuff at the wall, and thinking that they could raise money for anything, because again, people were giving money out, and so companies were getting validated for concepts that I don't think should have been receiving money at that time. And I think there's been a lot of lessons learned from that time to today. I think that the crypto space has learned a lot about playing with government and understanding the government's role, not only as an enforcer, but as a partner. And I think that's still a little murky and trying to be figured out. I mean, we talked all about this new administration coming in. But what you're seeing since the Trump election, again, it's only been a couple of months, is this exuberance come back. You're seeing Bitcoin over 100,000, right? Which again, it's a market signal of some sort. But we're a tax exempt 501c3 nonprofit supporting economic development and growth. We're not here to speculate on any sort of cryptocurrency. We're here to support founders who are building companies that can add to the Massachusetts and regional economy. And so we take a much different perspective than just number go up. It's does this business have sound fundamentals? Is there a revenue model? Do you have a product? What does your sales pipeline look like? So we've learned a lot, especially because we weren't Bitcoin fundamentalists or blockchain tech people. We've taken our practical application from other industries and come into this space. And I think, sometimes that benefits us.
And was it 2022 or 2023 that Boston Blockchain Week started? How many years running has that been?
So we're going into our fourth year of organizing. Okay. Yeah, Boston Blockchain. So we took it over in 2022. It was an event that a venture capital fund in Boston used to host, and they gave it up. When we were building our sort of value proposition to support the space, took it over and said, this will complement what we're seeking to do and creating, Quincy as the blockchain capital of the Commonwealth and as a global hub. And so we took it over in 2022 with that idea of we needed to give some vibe up here, because we've got people like Elizabeth Warren who are in our backyard, taking every chance that they get to, demonize this space. So, we're in our fourth year this year. Last year was great. We loved having you, Matthew, participate with us. It was great that you could come out. We had over 100 speakers last year. We had about 500 people come for over 3-4 days. And, we're planning for another big event this year. So mark your calendars for September 9th to the 12th of 2025. We're getting our program ready. We're updating all the email. We've got our team out here already selling sponsorships and booking the talent. So we're excited for that.
Well, that's awesome. I've been telling people that Boston and Blockchain Week they had a very particular energy that amongst other US events I felt was lacking. And so I wanted to raise this because I think you have done a good job of curating the vibe and the sentiment that we want to see in the US, where it has elements of being relevant and hip, but you also have those technical conversations. And then very, very importantly, you have people from the government that can weigh in and add that authority to the conversations that are being held. Because you can see in some crypto-based events, it is anti-government, it is all about speculation and just baseless claims that get people riled up and might move some money. Everyone's pitching themselves, but it doesn't advance the industry. You need that really careful mix of actual influential people for an event to have a ripple effect and then change the industry. And I think Boston Blockchain Week is something that's doing that.
Well, I really appreciate that. We certainly are playing the long game here, and going back to some of the other concepts around real estate. I think I learned from my experience in real estate, and then especially it was solidified in the energy business, is that everything is project development, right? You're just, everyone's a developer in their respective spaces or industry, and you have to have a long-term perspective. Some things might happen faster than you would anticipate, but you certainly have to be prepared if you want that outcome of project completion, you have to have the perspective that you're willing to sit tight until you make that happen. And I think in this space, it's going to take a long time. None of this, to really get to the place of ubiquity with blockchain adoption and people using it like they do the internet on a daily basis, it's going to take a while. So you better sit tight and not ruffle as many feathers trying to get there, but try to bake more people into the program.
Yes, very true. Everyone wants to disrupt, but that's a double-edged sword. So I want to ask, though, amongst the industries, and because you're in this role in the accelerator, are there certain industries or use cases that are emerging that you think are going to become ubiquitous, widespread, adoption because it's trusted, it's affected? And then if you want to touch on it, are there any use cases that you're just sick of hearing about?
That's funny. I think that the answer is probably the same for both, which would be payments. Because at least the way that I'm seeing the next iteration of rolling out, individual participation in a place like a city or town, it's getting people acclimated to using wallets for payments of various kinds. So, the idea is, hey, let's set up the city so that they can accept payments. Let's set up merchants in the city so that they can accept payments and start to get that activity rolling through at least the local and regional economy, and like getting people used to it, or introduced and then used to it. And I think there's a lot of payment plays, that have been introduced, but again, it certainly needs to be something that is user friendly, that's going to allow people to participate in this thing, because the barrier to entry can't be high enough that it's going to dissuade them from using it. So it needs to be simple. Yeah, I think that's it.
Let me know if you have an opinion on this. When it comes to user experience, there's a big conversation around custody and self-custody. If a really streamlined way to access a wallet is that I don't have to understand wallets, and a company on the other side provides everything for me, which is sort of counterintuitive to the autonomy that blockchain is supposed to offer. Which direction if we want widespread adoption but understand that there's a learning curve, I mean, how do we navigate this?
That's a tough one. I don't have that figured out. If I did, then we probably wouldn't be here right now and I'd be working on it. But I don't know. I think that there's a trade-off. There's going to be there's going to end up being there's a trade-off in this whole thing, right? Because it's not this used to be an anti-government thing, like from the get-go, and now here we are. You've got political action, capital, and people mobilized in order to affect political outcomes that will benefit the space, that you can somehow have a seat at the table. So the whole thing's changed a lot. And I think that all the interests aren't actually aligned, because you get people with different philosophical perspectives all around. So there still exists that anti-government angle, the traditional, the fundamentalists to this space. But then you've got the people, the institutional organizations itself, and then the institutional diaspora. So the people who've come from the institutional space, who know the institutional space but understand the potential disruption for the innovation, who are trying to mix those together. So that, I don't know, that's a long introduction to finish what I started saying, which is I don't know. I don't know. I think it ends up being a mix, and it depends on somebody's aptitude. I think the institutions will end up being more prevalent than will the sort of sovereign self-custody holders.
I mean, it makes sense from a widespread. If we really want that level of adoption, just knowing that there's a normal curve that applies to people, you can't possibly expect everyone to figure out wallets. And on the government level, is anyone talking about self-custody or custody, or just government not really care who holds that power?
I don't know. I can't speak for all government. I think there are some places that are probably speaking about this more than others. I bet like Wyoming is probably speaking about concepts around this more than other places. They're probably the most advanced in terms of government adoption. I know that they're working on some cool projects, including a stable coin for the state right now, which is nice, which is interesting to see. Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak for all of government.
Do you want to use Wyoming as a model for what you're working on locally?
Yeah, we want to use the sort of best applications from all over the place. So we're, certainly interested in what Wyoming's doing. But I love what Lugano, Switzerland has done. They have turned that place into a global hub. And that was driven by the municipality itself. We've become friendly. We had the director of economic development and the deputy CFO come to our blockchain week in 23. And so they have been great partners to us in helping guide some of our thinking around what we can and could do here in the city of Quincy.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I would certainly describe you as a visionary for Quincy to take these different use cases and successful instances of the technology and say, we can apply this locally and we can physically uplift the city. How do you see Quincy with this technocratic, maybe that's the right word, maybe not, utopian vision playing out? How does it impact people? Why should they be embracing it?
I think introducing people to these concepts early is important so that we're ahead of the curve. I think we're on the path regardless, like either whether it's introduced as a self-sovereign, management of your own finances that you can freely transact, or if it's a top-down institutionally driven thing like this, the concept of a central banking digital currency. This is the next wave of the integration of government and finance. And so I would rather, at least we sit in a place where I'd rather be able to introduce this to people that I live by, work with, collaborate with, etc., than just sort of have it thrown in our plate otherwise, so that we can hopefully control the best possible outcomes for the people that we serve. Because I think there's so many different pieces of experimentation out there, that something's going to happen. There's one thing that came to mind earlier, is that the baseline method for transacting, which we used to understand a little bit better, which is through cash, right? Behaviors have changed so much in the advent of the use of like credit cards and debit cards, that it's phased out, I think, a lot mentally for people to use cash as a primary method for transacting, or at least having that ability to freely transact without tracking. And that's some of the place where, from a philosophical perspective, that's not where I would want things to go. I want people to be able to freely transact without having themselves tracked and traced and their data sort of managed along the way. But, and those are things that we can, at least at this point in time, where there haven't been widespread implementation of new federal, fiscal and monetary policy from central banks, that we can still hopefully protect that.
On a more abstract level, and I'm giving you permission to get up on the soapbox, is the hope that being friendly to these technologies would encourage startups and capital to move into Quincy, which is going to have an economic uplifting of the people there?
Yes, and it already has had that effect. So we will soon be publishing. We put together a economic impact assessment, which takes a look at our prior work, and then it takes a look at the work that we're seeking to do through the Institute of Digital Infrastructure. And I mean, it measures. I think the baseline data point was for every dollar that Cubic Labs has spent, there's economic value of about 3.5 that's created regionally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, we love that. That means we're fulfilling our mission, but that is the economic driver and the indicator that we're using to tell people, hey, listen, look what we've done with this amount of money. Watch what we could do with more and bring in more partners. But certainly we want, we put together, as I said, a public-private partnership before with the state and some other private sector partners. And the whole goal was, if the state gives us $2 million, we would match that in private capital contributions that would go to our founders and startups. And we've already eclipsed that 3 times over, So,
wow.
Yeah, in terms of the private sector commitment. And so these are great indicators. The capital has already been coming, and we want to continue, to multiply that amount of capital that comes through the city of Quincy as this hub for blockchain tech and development. Of course, in other verticals as they continue to complement each other in the growth of these systems.
Are there any case studies or white papers that the city has put out? Because I think one thing that would encourage a change in sentiment at the city level is if they actually understand the return on investment for their dollars. Mm-hmm. And I bring this up because when I had met with state legislators in Wisconsin, the big hesitation when it comes to startups is they feel like they are burning money. If they are putting capital into early stage companies or bleeding edge technology, things that are more experimental, that is setting money on fire. And sometimes that's true because a lot of those early stage companies fail and ideas don't make it out to market. Or like we were saying a couple of years ago, the ideas are just completely baseless. And this has turned off, I think, a lot of more conservative politicians, fiscally conservative at least, where they're not willing to take that risk. So kind of a twofold question. Do you have, documents that people should be looking into? And then how do you feel about just putting money into startups in the first place? Is this something like, how do you balance that risk and return?
Yeah. So we'll have to put out the components that, we will from that economic impact assessment that would, help shed some light. And the case study is essentially what is Cubic Labs in the city of Quincy's case. on the other side, we've been giving out non-dilutive grants to founders, and it's a symbiotic relationship that we hold our founders to standards, and we of course make sure that they're adhering to our data collection and our regular check-ins in order to understand that they're making incremental progress with the funds that we've given them, and that and then we're the stewards of that capital, so we need to be able to make sure that we are appropriately giving out that capital. It's been a great test run for us because we've been successful. So, and now, we've been learning as we're building, right? We are too a startup. We're just turned 5 years old in November, but we have learned how to effectively manage those relationships with those we've given capital, and that's free money. And so, I think eventually what we would like to do is have our own pool of capital, investment capital that we raise from outside investors that we can deploy into these same membership companies that we host here, that can aid in their growth from the next level. But there's also some more financial upside for our organization.
So as we start to wrap up, another segue here, but playing into the power dynamic, because I think you're in roles where you're on the opposite side of the table as the founder, where it's sort of an assessment and you're looking for the right companies. And so I want to give you an opportunity just to offer some words of wisdom to people who are building companies, particularly in the blockchain space. What should they be striving towards? What's going to get them funded and adopted as a solution, or especially as an accelerator and working with venture capital? What should founders be doing?
Some of the first thing that came to mind was it's nice to be idealistic, but sometimes that idealism doesn't carry over into sound business concepts, because I think some people they come with concepts that seek to change the world in different ways, but they're not connected to reality. Let's put it that way. So I think that as always for us, sound business fundamentals are paramount. The technology is nice. It's not blockchain for blockchain's sake. It is right. What can blockchain do to provide a service or an efficiency or a value? So, those are the things that we certainly look for, because I think, again, especially during those times of exuberance, it was, all right, well, how about blockchain for this? And it's like, well, does it really need blockchain? Why are we using this? But, we have been fortunate to work with some smart people, and we are learning on a daily basis, what we don't know too. There are a lot of things that people, this whole space is being invented right before your very eyes, right? So, nobody knows anything yet. But I don't think that we are necessarily, gambling. We're looking for good partners, and we're looking for strong collaborators that understand that we are an organization that can help them move the needle a little bit further. But obviously at the end of the day, it's on them to deliver and to perform. So we've had fun, even in some of the young guys. Like, we just hired a couple associates a couple months ago, and we're learning a ton from them, because these young people like yourself are natives. Like, you understand this space more implicitly, like I understood the internet when I was younger. And so, just and you have to be on top of all of the changes that happen on like the news happens so fast now, that it just flies right by. So, but I know that was a hodgepodge of words, and but I think you got something in there.
Well, practicality. I think that's
the
bottom line.
Yeah, practicality.
You need an actual solution to a problem that already exists. There's too many startups that have a solution and they're searching for that problem and seeing if it'll stick. And in many cases, the problem is not a hair on fire problem. And so you might realize operational efficiencies, but it doesn't warrant a complete revitalization of the technical stack. Companies and governments have invested money into building these systems, and then you have an entrepreneur that comes along and says, I'm going to disrupt it. I'm going to change everything.
Right.
And it's really, it can be naive. It's not super naive. It's hopeful, but it can be naive. I think, when I was talking about, the double-edged sword of disruption, sometimes you can be so ambitious that it actually turns away the customers that you're looking for, because they see you as trying to push over the system, flip it over, flip the table, and just change things for the sake of changing. And you can't be a startup with that mentality. You just can't. That's I think the biggest takeaway that I got from your hodgepodge answer, to use your words.
I agree with you. And I think naive is a good word. I think I came at it from idealism, but similar thing.
Awesome. Well, final notes. You had mentioned Boston Blockchain Week coming up September, was it 9th?
9 to 12th in 2025.
9th
yes.
to 12th in 2025. You've also got this accelerator program. Are applications still open for that? When do they close?
They are. They'll be open up until, I want to say, mid-January. So if you go to cubiclabs.com, that's QUBICLABS.com, it'll take you, there's a apply button up in the corner that will allow you to apply for our 12-week accelerator program. It is a mostly virtual, but 2-week on location here in Quincy, Massachusetts program. And it's awesome. Manuel Rinaldi, who joined us about a year ago as our program director, he has come from a background in accelerating programs and has put together our new sort of redesigned marquee program that I'm super thrilled about. And we're just updating our website right now so it can adequately represent all of the mentors and advisors and the companies who, of course, we've worked with in the past. But please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can just reach me at ian@cubiclabs.com or just apply on the website. We just put out the applications a week or two ago. We've got 60 companies that have come in so far. So, we're happy about those numbers. And of course, we always want more.
Well, that's awesome. I'm going to try my best to get the episode out in time for people to take action on that. If we miss the deadline, are there other ways for people to get involved with Cubic?
Yeah, we're going to do 2 accelerator programs a year. So if you miss out on the one that starts in February, then we'll have another one that starts in the fall. I think probably it'll start after Blockchain Week in September. But yeah, we will have also, we just started a new series of startup pitch competitions in collaboration with a local angel investor group. So we'll be doing those quarterly. And stay tuned also for, what are we calling them? I guess they're specifically designed accelerator programs that will sit outside of our core accelerator program. So they'll be sponsored and they'll be more challenge based, responding to, an institution's desire or need. So we'll be rolling those out as well. So accelerator program, pitch competitions, Boston Blockchain Week, and stay tuned for the launch of our Institute for Digital Infrastructure as well.
Awesome. It's fantastic that you are spearheading all of that amongst all the other responsibilities that you have as a public servant. So, this has been a phenomenal conversation because you have breadth and depth of knowledge, which we need more folks like that. And then the advocacy component, which is something that you do well. One, because you're charismatic and handsome, but two, because you like to get out there, and it's about being bold. It's about talking about these issues and encouraging people to say, yeah, we need to do something different. Let's go talk to a representative. Let's get on social media, and let's push for this. So I applaud you. I thank you for the work that you're doing, and for this episode as well. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come on here and talk with me about code and concrete and politics.
Well, it was my pleasure. I was honored that you asked me to join. It was great to have you at Blockchain Week last year. Hope you'll come visit us again soon.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to getting back to Boston. It was one of the better cities that I've been to.
Good.
All right, Ian. Well, thank you very much. All links to your stuff will be in the show notes. Thank everyone for listening, and I invite you all back to the next episode of Code and Concrete.
Thank you.